You're listening to Through Help and Back. Through Help and Back is a podcast focused on mental health, addiction, treatment, recovery, and all things related to personal improvement and wellness. Don't worry, we're not here to talk about problems without solutions, and we're definitely not here to talk about struggles without success. So come with your problems, leave with our solutions. All right, welcome to Through Help and Back. We are really excited today. We have an amazing guest to bring to you. I have been absorbing and checking out this young lady's content, and I can assure you we're going to leave this episode feeling empowered. We're going to leave it feeling a little more disciplined and a little more focused, and we're going to have some strategies for self-improvement. So I have Michelle Stiles with me here today. She is a wellness coach. She is working everywhere. She is based in Canada, Calgary to be specific, but she's helping people in Europe, in Australia, in Costa Rica, and obviously bringing her lessons and her positivity and her discipline strategies to the folks there in Calgary. So Michelle, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited for this chat today.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And you're kind of hiding from some snow, so it's a good opportunity to get inside. And
100% I am.
Have you guys had a crazy winter up there? How has it been in Calgary this year?
It's been a crazy last couple of weeks, so I can't complain. We had it pretty easy the rest of the winter.
And that's right up your alley, though, with that, an easy winter, because you like to get out and be active and do all that kind of stuff. So
the mountains call my name year round, so it's easier when the snow's not up to your knees.
That's cool. Is that something new, or did you kind of grow up that way and you've always been kind of connected to nature like that?
Oh, we've always been outside. We were raised outside, but the hiking, hitting the higher peaks came more as I became an adult, and it just grounds you. It resets you for the week. It completely detaches you. I find it to be such an important practice of my enjoyment, my activity levels, but also for my mental health. So it just continues to stem that way.
Yeah, 100%. And I know we'll dig into that because I've seen some of your lessons and your content, but there's something there. There's something there with connection to nature, connection to earth, the natural ways that are very energetic and empowering for us. And so, I'm glad you're experiencing that and living that. So in a general sense, wellness coach, let's talk a little bit about that. And let's talk about what that means for you, because there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of people who are doing different things under the umbrella of wellness. But what are you focused on and what do you work with?
Absolutely. So I'll just do a really quick summary history. Like most people that come into wellness space, they are coming in and it starts with the physical. I want to look a certain way. And then as you recognize, you come deep and you go, well, I look this certain way and I still don't feel the way I want to feel. So then you dig a little bit deeper. So I started with personal training, and then I moved into a background of natural nutrition. I studied that, and then became a whole body health, the mind, body, spirit connection. So more recently, in the last kind of 3 or so years, I've become the more spiritual side to connect all three of those. So the science, the basics of it, the logic of it, how our biology works, and then combining it with how am I going to feel? What is my mental health? What is my emotional health, spiritual health? And I find a really great way to contain that all into one simple package is by honoring yourself with habits and discipline to create a life that feels good.
I'm interested to learn a little bit more about that progression. You talked about how people focus physically and then they sort of expand that and they want to look deeper, inside out, more holistic. Is that something you learned through personal experience? Is that something that you saw in your training career? A little bit of both? Like, how did you come to that realization of that progression?
Yeah, very much so. So quite honestly, when I first started, it wasn't from the healthy space. It was wanting to look a very certain way. Didn't really matter if the health was there as long as I achieved that look, which is unfortunately how I find a lot of people get into their fitness and health journey originally. And then recognizing that, yeah, I looked a very specific way and I wasn't happy. I wasn't comfortable in my body. So what could I do to change that? So the next natural, tangible thing you can grasp onto is nutrition. But then again, not just nutrition to look a certain way. Yeah, you can reach all your goals slowly on like protein powder, really even on supplements. But what is that doing for your whole body health? And then it became about longevity. So that's when I got into the natural nutrition, started studying that and started taking I studied at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition of what does your body need to function optimally? There is a very different feeling between living on supplements and living on whole foods, nutrient dense foods, while also not having that restriction factor where you don't want to even go out with friends or enjoy birthdays because God forbid you had something that had sugar in it. So again, finding that balance of you're not feeling, you're starting to feel good because you're eating whole foods, but then it becomes too far on the restriction side where you won't even touch things that are bad foods, which I don't like to label them that way. And then you naturally stem into the, okay, well, my body feels good. Physically, my body feels good, but my mind doesn't feel good. So what about longevity? If the stress that you can cause on your body by having these hyper restrictive modes is just as damaging as any donut might ever be. Not to say that you can't eat a donut. There's nothing wrong with the donut. So finding that full trifecta of that's when I genuinely felt good, which is what stemmed. I've said this for so long. The feeling of feeling good, many people don't recognize it because we've become so on autopilot, stressed, exhausted, whatever it is, consumed by social media. And I'm speaking from experience here too. I'm not standing on my box here preaching my stretch. I know this because I've lived it and I've learned it. And once you recognize that if you don't have one, you really are not getting the full feeling of feeling good. That's waking up energized most of the time, being excited to go after your day most of the time, feeling good in your body in the way that you chase after your nieces, run up a mountain, go on walks with your parents, whatever it is, and having it be a full encompassing experience of what it feels to feel good and reminding people of what it takes to get there.
So kind of that line between surviving and thriving, right? You hear that phrase a lot. Like there's a big difference between surviving and thriving. And, I played some sports growing up and in college and things like that. And I knew some guys who got really into like the bodybuilding and the powerlifting and things like that. Cause a lot of times from football, that's a natural offshoot to kind of like working on that kind of stuff. And then, boxing and MMA came around and people really got into that. But these guys would look phenomenal, completely shredded and no body fat and blah blah blah. But what they always explained to me was when I look my best, I feel my worst because I'm dehydrated. I haven't had sugar in a year, that kind of thing. My sleep and my water are dialed in to a certain degree, and so I think it starts as an aspirational thing. Like I want to look the best, or I want to do the most I can with my body. But it seems to be that it can tip and go the other direction where it's like something that started out very positive and healthy can actually become quite negative for you. So, you're nodding. Did you kind of go through that cycle yourself, or you sort of know of that, or have you seen that?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It always starts with a great intention and then it just kind of goes off the rails, and it's all coming to reframing of what does healthy look like? It doesn't look like the magazines. That's not health. You've hit it right on the point, right? It's recognizing, what does their skin look like? What is the clarity in their eyes? How do they move about in the world? It's nothing to do with that shredded six pack or whatever detail wants to hyper focus on, and reframing what health looks like, which takes a little bit of time, especially in the world that we live in. So
for you personally, and we could talk a little bit about your clients and kind of their experiences as well, but growing up, what do you think sort of fed that desire to optimize how you look? Was that from a place of insecurity, or was that from a place of aspirational, just wanting to achieve? I mean, was there a little bit of a mix there? Like, I'm wondering what the baseline is that puts somebody in a mindset of like, I've got to be, or I'm not good enough, or, what was that for you?
I love that question. It's something I think about a lot. Where did this come from?
Where did it come from? Yep.
Exactly. Overall, I had an amazing childhood. I had an annoyingly good childhood, really supportive family, structured, but didn't give me everything. I had to work for what I wanted. But, really the baseline of the looks of the body image was the wanting, or I was a ballerina all growing up. I started dancing when I was 2 and danced very, very obsessively. So I was always petite in my frame and I was always acknowledged for that. So as I've gone through this work, it's been, that's where I find my value. If I'm not small, it's not who I am. It's almost an identity thing. Now, that was never pushed on to me by, family or unreasonable expectations. That was just something that I've internalized as my identity. And I needed to be able to release that identity to allow myself to just be whatever size I currently am in a healthful way. I don't have to always be this rail thin ballerina. It's okay if that's how it is healthily, but not attaching my identity to it.
And you felt like that's what happened. So just sort of social conditioning, just you noticed other girls getting, compliments maybe for staying lean, or even yourself, you would look better, or your coaches would respond to you if you maintained your weight, and it just became, this is a good thing. This is what a good person, or what I should do when I'm doing good things. And so what kind of problems did that cause for you? Like it's changed. So it indicates to me that it must have caused some sort of issue along the way for you to want it to change. That can look nice and that can look beautiful. And ballet is like, it's one of the most beautiful forms of art there is, how people can move and flow, and it's amazing. But I imagine it comes with some downsides and some dark sides as well. So what kind of problems were you experiencing with that?
Yeah, I noticed it most with my mental health at first. And then once I started to learn more about it, figured out that, almost everyone has disordered eating habits. Now, mine wasn't a full-blown eating disorder, but it absolutely could have gone that way if I didn't catch myself, right? So it was just, it was the restriction, it was the limitations, it was letting these very specific ways consume me instead of enjoying life and having a healthy balance of fun and play and structure and discipline and health and whole health, right? Recognizing that discipline doesn't mean you're going all the time. Sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is take rest. Now, again, that was very much, I'm very driven by myself. I lean towards perfectionist tendencies, which I've worked on for a long time. I don't even resonate with them anymore. Cause I'm like, no, don't take that identity on. But very much, I've always had high expectations of myself. And I never felt that it was so much an external pressure. I had very reasonable expectations as a child from my parents and my coaches and teachers and things like that. And, enough to push and challenge, but not something that was unreasonable. So the more I went into it, which is multiple years of therapy and multiple years of coaching and lots of journaling and all that self-reflection, I recognized that, most of it was internal, me deciding where my value was as a human being.
I think that's such a healthy thing that you just kind of touched on there with, because sometimes when people end up with issues, whether it be disordered eating or just, you said, struggles with your mental health, whatever you want to label it as, there's this tendency to sort of talk about like, well, where's the trauma, right? Like who hurt you? Your family must have been screwed up. There must have been divorce, or you must have gone through some stuff. But you're basically saying, no, actually, I had a really good support system. This is something that developed internally with me. But you still had the foresight and I guess the insight to seek help, go to therapy, do the work that it took to get into a good place with yourself, right? So what I'm touching on is it doesn't take this traumatic event to sort of set you off on this path. It can be something that develops slowly over time. What was it that kind of created awareness in you that like, I've got to do something about this? Because some people can live that way their whole lives, right? And you're, fairly young, and it seems like you've gained great insight in a short amount of time. So what was the trigger that was like, no, I've got to look at this in a different way. I've got to get some help here.
So 100%, that's it. Just, you get to the point where you're thinking, this is not the life that I'm looking to live. You just get to a point where you think, no, I'm made for more. I am made to feel better than I currently am. And I'm going to actively choose that I'm not doing this anymore. You get fed up with yourself. And you know what? My turning point was, I was so tired of thinking about food. I didn't want to look at food because I was so tired of thinking about food, It was nothing even with the consuming. It was the thinking about it, the tracking macros, tracking calories. And there's nothing wrong with that in a healthy environment with a coach by yourself. But for me, at that point in my journey, it was just consuming my thoughts. And then I had this mind-blowing moment where I thought, no, I'm done. I'm done, period. And I got my first therapist. And it was the first time I was willing to really talk about it. And then the next year, I built my business. I say the year that I stopped tracking calories and thinking so hard about my food was the year I built an entire business. It just goes to show how much it consumes us if we let it. So I'm very grateful that that trigger happened, that I thought, no, I'm done. My life's worth more than this.
You got sick and tired of being sick and tired is sort of the phrase there, right? And we're not trying to open up your session notes or anything like that, but can you talk a little bit about the work in that year in therapy, like maybe some of the things you focused on or some of the techniques you used to help you make this transition to a more healthy mindset? Like, what was it that you focused on when they say doing the work? What was your work? What helped you?
Ooh, good question. So the perfectionism was definitely top of the list there.
Yeah, you did perfect therapy, right? You did it exactly right. No.
I'm not feeling this right though. She was like, that's fine. There's no right way to feel it.
I only journaled 50 pages yesterday. Is that enough?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was the absolute biggest takeaway that I have written right here up on my board that I.
You're good. Just roll. Ian can clip it. Yep.
So the biggest thing I have right up here on my board is that I have to feel my feelings. I don't have to fix them. I have to feel them. And it wasn't until therapy that I recognized that I had no idea how to feel a feeling. I didn't even know what that meant. So then kind of digging in further, I realized that I was living at this surface level, which is why I was having that dissatisfaction in life, even though everything was fine. I was ticking the boxes. I had the great relationship. I just bought my home. I had a great job, ticking everything. And I was still dissatisfied. And it was because I was living at that surface level, because I had no idea how to feel my feelings. And learning to sit in them and then again, not fix them. So that was absolutely the biggest takeaway. And I still implement that every single day of stop trying to fix it. Just sit here and be still for a second. Why is that coming up for you? And just letting that why be enough of an answer and not have to do more about it.
Evaluating the feeling, more of just acknowledging and then accepting. Like I know that I'm feeling a certain way, whether it be for you probably tired or less energetic or unmotivated or probably pretty uncomfortable feelings for you. But to say like, that doesn't mean I'm being lazy. That doesn't mean I shouldn't feel that. It's just where the state I'm in right now, and it's not going to last forever. And it is what it is. And I move on. So, how, when you say that, I want you to kind of like elaborate a little bit. I know you're talking about it, but when you say feel your feelings, I didn't feel any feelings. So for somebody who may not be having the same type of struggles, they may walk around going like, I feel stuff all day. What do you mean feel my feelings? So what is the difference before and after in terms of what you did with feelings? Like what did a feeling feel like before? And what is it like for you now that you can actually feel them?
I love that. Because I have one very specific line that I had a realization for that, where what that meant for me, not feeling my feelings, was because I've had a very even level life. I've just very grateful for the life I've lived. I haven't had any major traumas. I've so much to be grateful for. I felt guilty for feeling any emotion other than gratitude and happiness, because why the heck would I? Why would I deserve to feel that any other feeling when I've had everything I could possibly ever need in life?
Other people have it worse. What are you crying about, right? Like
exactly
the classic, there's children starving in Africa. So how dare you turn your nose up at the food, Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you feel upset? Why would you feel anger? Why would you feel frustrated? Why would you feel lost? You don't deserve to feel that feeling. You've been fine. You're fine.
That had to have a major impact on your relationships, I would think. I mean, because so much of relationships are that interchange of my feeling state and your feeling state and how they work together, acknowledging and affirming and supporting each other's relationships and our emotions within those relationships. So I wonder if that didn't cause issues for you in relationships where maybe you didn't feel a right to express yourself in the relationship, or maybe even couldn't be fully present. Did you have any of those experiences, or am I just way out in left field?
You couldn't hit the nail more on the head with that comment.
Oops, I get lucky every now and then.
That is so on point. That's exactly what it was, which was a big thing that came out of therapy as well, was no, I was surface level in all my relationships, including my friendships. Something that my best friend always did. She would say, she was like, I love you. I'd be like, yeah. She'd be like, I love you. Uh-huh. And then she said, say it back. I love you. Yeah, it's fine. And then pulling that into my romantic relationship, we had an amazing relationship, but it was very surface level based on me. He was great. We were kind. We had lots to connect on, lots of overlapping interests, things like that. But I was always surface level. I never let him in. And so then for 3 years after that, I didn't date anyone. I didn't even consider it. I just brought it back into me. And now this relationship I'm in, it's like I've never dated before. It's like I've never been in a long-term relationship before, because I am 1,000% in it. And we talk about our feelings all the time, the real ones, not just the, oh, I love you so much. It's like, hey, you know what? You did this today and I didn't like it.
Yeah, so it's so funny. So we'll wander into. I'll say the things that are potentially controversial because I get in less trouble for it. But it's almost like a gender-based kind of situation where you hear about guys all the time being emotionally unavailable, right? Like, I wish he was more emotionally available. But that seems like that may have been you in certain relationships, right? So I'm imagining almost like a gender flip there, right? Where the guy is walking around going like, tell me how you feel. I want to talk about your feelings. Give me more. And you're like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. What's the big deal? It's fine. I love you. Go on. Everything's fine on paper. So let's not worry about how it looks or feels on the inside. The boxes are checked. So we're good. But now you sound like you're more emotionally available and as a result are having a much deeper experience in your current relationship. So the work was worth it.
Absolutely. I can't emphasize that enough. Put in the work. It is so worth it. This is what feeling good feels like, is feeling good when you're mad, feeling good when you're happy,
No, that's amazing. Congratulations on that. I'm sure it's an ongoing process and, we're never done, right? We're always evolving. We're always learning. So before we go on, I want to say a few words about Anew Behavioral Health. Anew Behavioral Health is an outpatient provider of mental health and substance abuse services in Ohio and New Hampshire. That means that Anew can successfully treat mental health and substance abuse issues or dual diagnosis if you're struggling with both. Their integrated approach allows for them to successfully address issues related to anxiety, depression, addiction, trauma, and really anything that stands between your life and the life you could be living. You really cannot bring them an issue that they have not successfully treated. They have also solved one of the biggest problems for people seeking help. They have a dedicated team waiting to hear from you at helpnow@anewbh.com. If you contact them today, within 24 hours, you will have heard back from, wait for this, a real live person, and will also have your first appointment scheduled at that time. So how do you contact them? Well, if you're in Ohio or New Hampshire, you're probably close to one of their local locations. You're welcome to go in. If not, you can always reach them online at anewbh.com. And if you're interested in services for you or loved one, use that address, helpnow@anewbh.com. So I want to touch about this concept of discipline, right? So that's something that really caught my eye because I know, like, playing sports, discipline meant one thing, right? And it wasn't always positive and it wasn't always a lot of fun. You would hear the word discipline and you kind of, cringe a little bit because it means, like, basically it meant somebody's going to tell me what to do, or I'm going to do it whether I like it or not, or it's the military. The military is disciplined, right? But you seem to have a different take and you seem to have a different application. So tell me a little bit about your concept of discipline and how it fits into your work.
Beautiful. I love that you said military there because that's a word I use all the time. I say discipline is not militant. Discipline is rooted in self-love. Discipline creates your freedom. Discipline is structure, but coming from a place that you're choosing. It's you taking control of a life that you want to live, a life that you love, versus, yeah, this person tells me what to do. I have to do it because I have to do it, not because I get to do it. And those words seem so trivial, but they make a massive impact, the get versus have. And absolutely, discipline is not militant. It is rooted in self-love. And that's the biggest message I like to get across is it is showing yourself that you are worth this dream life. And this is how you're going to do it.
Unpack that a little bit for me too. So just maybe explain that a little further. So self-love, the concept of self-love and how discipline feeds that and doesn't take away from that. So do you have any, like, applications or specific examples? Because I think As somebody who has struggled with discipline, I'm not the most disciplined person, right? And it's so funny. I cringe saying that because I saw one of your posts where it's like, don't feed the negative self-perception. You can't just say, I'm just an unorganized person, or I'm not that, but I'm going to say it, right? Like my resume states that there are areas in my life when I'm not as disciplined as I could be, for sure. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how do you connect that to self-love? Because discipline so often just feels like a burden, like a have to, So how do you make that switch?
Okay. So when it comes to discipline, when you meet it from a place of self-love, this is saying, okay, we'll use exercise because it's a tangible thing that lots of people struggle with. You're saying, I need to do this because I need to look a certain way. I need to have this size jean. I need to have this body fat percentage. And it's beating yourself down to fit a standard that society has deemed appropriate or lovable or perfect, whatever that is. Whereas if you're coming from a place of self-love, I am choosing to go after these exercise goals, these movement goals, because I want to be able to run with my nieces when I'm watching them. I want to be able to climb mountains with my friends. I'm doing this because when I wake up in the morning, I love that I can bounce out of bed and move my body and I'm not feeling stiff or sick. I love that I get to nourish my body with whole foods not because I want to have the size 2 pant, but because I want to feel energized throughout the day. I want to have mental clarity. I want to be present at birthday parties. I want to be able to go out for the drinks with the girls and not feel guilty about it. So it's that reframe of coming into your why, which I'm big on, is why do you want this? And don't let it be an external factor. If no one else saw you doing X, Y, or Z, would you still be doing that because it felt good for you? So finding your why by determining, is this an external desire or an internal desire? And that internal desire is where the self-love stems from. You want to do it because you love your body, because you honor yourself. And you know that is the baseline of you showing up for the rest of the world, your family, your friends, in a positive way.
So a lot of my work is based around reframing, and I do a lot of solution focused therapy. And what I'm hearing is a lot of like switching it from the have to the get to. But it's also, we think about discipline as things that are going to take from us. It's going to take my time. It's going to take my energy. You're wanting to make that switch that actually, no, it's an investment. It's going to give you things. It's going to invest in a better version of yourself. It's going to invest in the life that you want to live and the person you want to be. So it's almost getting into identity too at the back end. Like, who do you want to be for the people that you love and that love you? Who do you want to be for yourself? And how do you invest in that version of self, as opposed to just like hating your current version enough to do something about it, right? So yeah, am I close? Is that, yeah?
Nail on the head there. And discipline is it's part of the pie. It's only a third of the pie. Like I said, I focus in on the mindset, the discipline, and the how to feel good, because the discipline is the actual execution part. We can't just want something. Of course, we need to actually act on it. So that's how you're going to do it. That's the tangible action step. I'm big on that. You mentioned the how to. It's not helpful just to have the information. It's how to implement that information. So the discipline is how you're going to physically do it. But then there's also the mindset and how to feel good with it to complete the whole pie.
About the other slices of the pie, since we're talking about diet and stuff, we can talk about pie, and we love to talk about that. So here you go. So you've got one slice is discipline. What are the other two?
So mindset is the base of it all. So mindset's what's going to get you started. It's going to make it from, instead of just thinking about what you want to do, as opposed to taking that first action step, being brave and posting the first thing on your Instagram account, being brave and going to sign up at that gym and actually going to work out at it, being brave and walking over to that person that you think is really cute and saying, hey, I'd love to maybe go and get a coffee one time. It's that mindset, again, coming back to that self-love, self-worth. I am worthy of taking this risk because it's something that I'm interested in, and it's not saying that it's going to work out, but being brave enough and then creating that self-confidence by doing what you say you're going to do, even without knowing the outcome. So the ice cream example that I had said at the beginning, the mindset is the cone. You need the structure. You can't have an ice cream cone without the cone. So you have to do the base layer of mindset work, because if you don't have that mindset, you might be able to push yourself through and do it anyway, but what joy is that going to bring you? It's going to completely take away the privilege and the experience of going after something. If you just grind through it and you go, I have to do this, I need to do this. It's kind of like getting into a cold shower in the morning. You can stand in the cold shower and grit your teeth and go, oh, this is the worst, this is the worst, this is the worst, and stand there for the longest 90 seconds of your life. Or you can step into the shower and go, I'm strong, I can do this. I am strong, I can do this. I am strong, I can do this. And it's going to make two very different 90-second experiences. Yes, you're getting the same outcome, but the journey is the whole point. The process is the whole point, right? So mindset is getting started. Discipline is the ice cream on top of your ice cream cone. And then the feeling good is the cherry.
Gotcha. So it's one is a motivational component. One is that's the mindset, right? That's the base layer. That's the foundational work to get you to a place, right? And then your discipline is your action, and then your the cherry on the top there is the results of your action, which is going to be to feed that good feeling, which is also a really strong reinforcer, right? So, how do you deal with this? I think about people who are getting started on any change journey, right? So I worked with addiction for a long time, and people get clean and they stop using drugs, and they sit down in therapy and they're very excited. They've got the right mindset. I want to stop. I want to change my life. I want to do things differently. And I have to hit them with the bad news that, hey, just so you know, it's going to get worse before it gets better, right? And that happens in so many different change processes because you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to encounter all these feelings you've been avoiding. You're going to try to do new habits. I mean, if you're right-handed and you brush your teeth right-handed, if you brush your teeth left-handed, like that's uncomfortable. And it's just brushing your teeth. Now imagine changing your whole life. So how do you, if we're going to use your ice cream cone, how do you deal with the fact that, okay, we've got the cone, we've got the first scoop, but man, I'm not seeing the whipped cream. I'm not seeing the cherry. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing the opposite. I feel like the cone's melting down my hands. I'm uncomfortable. Like this just isn't working, right? So how do you help people push through? How do you help people to get to over that hump?
Beautiful. There's a couple of things I like to do. First thing is have a clear end goal. And with a timeline, it's like using that SMART goal, right? SMART goals on a baseline are extremely effective. So having that clear goal, one goal at the timeline, and that's your why. I want to achieve X, Y, and Z by this time, and put it somewhere you're going to see it all the time so that when you have those moments, my hand is covered in ice cream, I'm freaking over this, the cold showers suck, and I can't follow these habits, you look at your why. And it needs to be a really specific why attached to emotion. So that's one really quick. And I even encourage my clients to write it in their phones, potentially have it as a phone background, write it somewhere they're going to even put it on a sticky note on the inside of kitchen cabinets, things like that. So that's a really quick trigger one that is easy and takes zero effort. Another way to do it is recognizing the way your dopamine reward system works. So not constantly rewarding yourself, but on those times where you are really struggling and you showed up and you did it anyway, give yourself a small, simple reward. Now that can be as simple as a thank you for showing up for you today. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you say you're going to do and having that one-on-one with yourself. Or something like a treat you really enjoy. Now, it doesn't always need to be a food treat. Maybe you went out and got yourself, that shirt that you really wanted because you showed up really hard this week and signed that client or did all 5 sessions at the gym. But having a range of small treats in not only food treats, but treats in general that you consider something enjoyable to you. Maybe, something I do is if I'm feeling really unmotivated, I go, okay, if I finish X, Y, and Z, I can go pick up my nieces and take them to the park, have that list. I write down a really simple scribble note list of things that I find enjoyable. So on the times that I'm not feeling motivated, boom, I'll give myself a little reward. Now you want to be careful with that. You don't want to reward yourself every time because then the dopamine reward system doesn't work as effectively and blah, blah, blah. But you're not always going to be unmotivated. Some days you're going to be raring to go. So you don't need a motivation those days, right? And then also I love writing did it lists. Celebrate what you've done. You don't realize how much you've done, right? And then reflecting without judgment on the days that do go wrong, the days that you didn't follow your new habit at all. You were all you did was scroll Instagram on the couch all day, and that was not in the schedule. Okay, without judgment, what happened today? I was hell tired. The kids were up all night, whatever it was. Then, okay, what can I do to change that in the future? I'll do X, Y, and Z steps. So those are my 4 big ones that I like to do. Quick hits, did it list on reflection of, look how much I have already done. Are you giving yourself credit where you deserve credit? And it just kind of keeps those small micro prompts to keep you moving along.
I love your did it list so much. I'm going to steal that immediately, just so you know, because I work with a lot of children, and I think they would really respond to that, to build that foundation and identity as a doer. I think is so amazing. And I think we have a weird thing in human nature. I've ran into this working with addicts where, they would stay clean for 29 days, and on the 30th day they would use for whatever reason. Everybody has, and then they would come in and they'd say, I'm a complete failure. And you'd have to go, hold on. So 29 out of 30 days you stayed clean. You use one time and you're defining your identity as a complete failure. Like, what is going on there, right? Like, and I used to have a little joke that was like, look, man, if you used once every 30 days, you never would have met me, right? You wouldn't go to treatment for using once every, I'm not saying you just go ahead and use, but I'm just saying, like, let's keep things in perspective here, So that did it list is really important because, there's 2 ways to build this, right? There's the affirmation way where it's like, I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, and doggone it, people like me. But without evidence, those affirmations fall apart really quick.
Yes.
So what's more important, right? To get really good at affirmations or to build an overwhelming list of evidence that you have, and you will, and I think you've nailed that. So tell me a little bit about your training. I mean, I don't need to check your credentials, but is this all trial and error that you discovered over the years? Were you trained on techniques like this? Like, how did your system develop?
You know what? So like I mentioned, I've just always been disciplined. I've always been rooted in it, and it's always lit me up. Just organization's kind of my thing. But then you start going through your natural stages of life where you're learning all these different factors about yourself, and absolutely, it was trial and error, and then implementing them with different people's approaches. And for a long time, I didn't even consider coaching for years. And I was free coaching for years and collecting all of this. And then I recognized that, hey, you know what? Everyone's very, very different. And of course you need different approaches, but the baseline issues that are triggering things and stemming things and sending things off course are almost always the same to a certain extent. So once I zoned in on those very specific base problems, and then you can stem off from there for individual needs, but it's fixing those root causes.
What are the common, whether it be yourself or your clients, what are the common base causes, the root issues that you are seeing that are holding people back? Like, what are these faulty belief systems, or what are these barriers that we're developing? Like, what are the common hurdles that you're seeing people have to overcome to get into this positive mindset?
It's not motivation. It's not discipline. It's not your habits. It's not any of these tick box things. And it's very much not, which seems crazy because of what I specialize in as a coach.
Sure.
But it's the lack of self-worth, self-love. And I really only fully understood that probably for the first time 2 years ago, working with a intuition coach. And it is a lack of self-belief, self-worth, and self-love. When you're having a day and you're feeling yourself, your work output is exponentially stronger, better physically, mentally than it would be on a day that you and you are not friends. So it's shocking to a lot of people that they have to learn to love themselves to get themselves to show up to do what they say they're going to do.
Is it fair to say, like, there was a point in time in your life where, like, on the outside, your resume was incredibly strong, right? So ballet, achievement, go-getter, motivated, discipline, like everything looked right. But on the inside, you were not feeling that self-love. I mean, that was like a personal experience.
100%. And it's something I didn't realize I didn't have until I had it. And then I thought, ooh, you never had that before.
Right.
Which again comes back to the not recognizing how good it feels to feel good.
Was it an absence of self-love, or was it actually like feeling negative about yourself and like never good enough kind of thing? Was it like the constant chase? Like I think about the rabbit that they have the dogs chase on the track and they never catch it. You know what I mean? And so you always get to feel like a failure. So was it just, I'm not feeling this as strongly as I should, or did it actually flip negative where you were critical and feeling negative about yourself?
Oh, at one point, definitely. It was very, very critical, very negative. And like you had mentioned before, it absolutely got worse before it got better. So reminding yourself in those moments that oh, it's a struggle right now. Quite frankly, I feel like shiz, like, no, thank you. And just, but it's worth it. I'm going to keep going through this because it's friggin' worth it.
How much fun are we having watching Michelle try to not cuss? It's like the greatest, the way you dodge around that, by the way. If you need to cuss, you can cuss. I mean, maybe you're just a non-cusser, but
I gotta be.
This podcast sadly has been labeled as explicit because of my mouth on several occasions.
I don't like to be the one that makes it explicit.
Yeah. So I have gotten better over time, but I picked up on, you play sports, you get the locker room talk going and it spills over, so, and sometimes it's just easier, right? Like it's just easier to say like, whatever. So that's scary. And I'll tell you why. So we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about kind of changing culture and like new media and Instagram and social media. And these are necessary things, right? Like it's part of our life now. We just had a guest on talking about we're not putting that genie back in the bottle. We have to learn how to optimize these tools and use them to the most positive ends. But if you're somebody struggling with self-image or not feeling good enough, I mean, I welcome you to Instagram where you can see an unlimited number of people in perfect lighting, living perfect lives, making $1 million immediately, and I don't know. I mean, was that a contributing factor for you, or do you see your clients struggling with the social media aspect, and how much harder does it make the process of getting into self-love and self-acceptance when you have all these ready-made examples of people that are taller and faster and smarter and better and richer and, because nobody ever posts pictures of their bad days. It's only the good days, So how do you deal with that challenge? And is it a challenge? I mean, maybe I'm just old. Maybe I'm like 150 years old and I'm like, the internet's going to get us. I don't know. Is that real? Like, are you really seeing that having an impact on yourself and your clients?
Absolutely. You know what? The internet can be an amazing thing, or it can be the worst thing that ever happened to you, or it can be somewhere in between. So it's making that active choice of what's going to serve me best in this moment. I'm a big fan of Unfollow Fridays. Just go through your list every Friday, and if you don't make through your entire list, or anytime, there's a lot of times where you have to feel discomfort. You need to be in an uncomfortable situation, and that is life. You know what? One of those times is not Instagram. You don't need to feel constantly challenged by Instagram. You want to feel challenged, go take a course, go speak to someone who is completely out of a social circle you normally speak in. Yeah, there's a few good things on Instagram that challenge you a little bit, but if that's overwhelming and it draws you into it more and you're feeling like crap every time you get off your social media, unfollow. I am real loose on the unfollow button, and not even too, if it's, family or friends, if you need to have a one-on-one side conversation. Hey, I love you. I want to know about your life. Let's text often. I'm doing a big clean out of my page. Just don't take any offense to it. I'm going to unfollow, but I'm unfollowing everybody.
Well, hopefully you'll spare us. We'll have to watch our account on Friday, Ian. So if you need to unfollow somebody, unfollow Ian. So if you need to beat up on Ian, do that, but spare the podcast. So no, I think that's such a healthy thing. And I think what you nailed when you said, how is this serving me? Right. Because I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, there are times when Instagram has gotten, my butt up off the couch because I'll see some dude killing it. And I'm like, okay, you know what is my excuse? I need to use this as fuel, but I'm using that as a source of motivation, it's that kind of thing. But it could also flip, right? That same post the next day I could look at it and go, I'll never be that. So what's the point? Boom. And it keeps me on the couch. You know what I mean? So I think you nailed it with that. How is this serving me? How am I using this? How do you teach that discernment? How do you teach your clients to develop that discernment and not go down that rabbit hole? Like, how can they, are there specific skills? Are there specific like litmus tests or like lines that you teach them? Like when you feel X, then you do Y, or, that kind of thing. Like, how do you instill that in them? Because I assume they're coming to you not great decision makers to begin with, right? So it sounds good to say like, well, just think of it in this way, but how do you actually help them develop that skill?
So one thing I start with is I share it all the time. I've actually already taken a video of my setup here. What you're seeing right now It's gorgeous. You'll see the video in a couple of days here. What's actually happening behind the scenes here? There's happy lights on, there's notes everywhere. It's chaos, right? So life is not Instagram, right? So having that perspective. Now, the first thing that I've implemented, actually learned it from a Jay Shetty podcast a while back. You choose when you're posting yourself or when you're seeing something. When you're posting yourself, am I proud of what I'm posting, of what I'm sharing? Before you post anything, and then take that, internalize, yeah, I'm proud of what I'm posting. Yes, I feel like this is something that's going to bring me joy, bring my friends joy. If you have a business account, I feel like it's going to serve my community, whatever it is. And then whatever that number is of likes, of comments, of shares, it does not matter. You were proud of what you posted in that moment. So for them sharing their own, that's what I always encourage them to do. Make a decision before you even post. The number means nothing. Then on the other side, with who you're following, what you're consuming, always just ask, how is this serving me? So when you see someone with the perfect big butt and the tiny waist and the big boobs, and
Ian shooting me a look. I think you said perfect big butt, and Ian like stood up out of his chair. So you have his attention. So. Anyway, sorry to break your flow. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is that motivating for me? Also, is that even achievable body for me? Do I have a very different shaped body than that human and it's not relevant? Or these very perfectly organized, put together homes? Do you prefer having stuff around you that from old experience, or do you prefer that pristine look? Remembering there's no right or wrong answer, but is that something that is inspiring you, or is that something that is crushing your soul every time you see it? So what I like to do with my clients when they are first or I do it myself as well too. If I kind of go through your first random 10 scrolls of Instagram that day, and 7 out of the 10 of them are making me feel this big instead of empowered and ready to go after it, because it's also the way the message is delivered. It's not the actual message itself. Is it, you're less than for not having a tidy home? Or is it like, hey, you know what? Having a tidy home can create more space for creativity, have you cleaning up less, more quality time with others, right? So it's not so much the message as the way the message is being delivered. So how can you go ahead and find other accounts that deliver it in a way that resonates for you? Just because it resonates for you doesn't mean it's going to resonate from someone else, right? So really just recognizing every time, is this serving me? It's such a simple question, and it completely brings you back to reality of, no, if you're feeling this big or if you're feeling empowered by a message.
And life is a buffet, right? You take what works for you and leave the rest for other people, right? The super tidy, super strict, super disciplined, like that just, to me, it doesn't, I got to have a little room to breathe, or I start to feel boxed in, right? So there's always room for improvement, but you don't have to like internalize that stuff and use it as a constant comparison. And I think that comparison game is what gets us in big trouble. So have you ever, I'll talk for a second here. So have you ever seen the experiment with the monkeys and the cucumbers and stuff like that? Have you seen this? So we got to post a link to this, Ian, and you could probably use this, Michelle. So they gave these monkeys cucumbers, and they're in a lab, and they're in like clear boxes, and they can see each other, stuff like that. They're happily eating the cucumbers. They're great. They'll do tasks for the cucumbers. Life is great, right? Well, a couple monkeys, they start giving them grapes for the same tasks, okay? And so other monkeys can see this. They're eating cucumbers, they look over, and their partner has a grape. And immediately they revolt. They start taking the cucumbers, they throw it back at the researcher, they refuse to eat it, they stop doing the task because that guy got grapes, and I only get cucumbers. When for weeks, cucumbers were great and delicious and lovely and wonderful. And so we always encourage our clients to think about, are you having a real problem or are you having a cucumber problem? Because a cucumber problem is a comparison problem. You're just looking at somebody else. I bought a new truck. I love it. Somebody goes buying a G-Wagon. I'm like, I hate my truck. You know what I mean? Like, you can't play the comparison game because you're always going to lose for sure. So yeah, we'll post that. You can use that. It's a 90-second video, and people are sort of like, yeah, they love it. You're into that, Ian? You like that idea? Yeah. So we've gotten Ian out of his chair twice today with big butts and cucumbers. So, So we're on the right track. So one thing I don't know if this is a challenge, but one thing I want to present for you, Michelle, is sort of like, so you talk a lot about like self-acceptance and self-love and things like that. There's a lot in society and media, and we're not judging, we're just observing and commenting on sort of like radical self-acceptance and radical self-love, right? So there's been, ads with overweight people or people that are engaged in unhealthy behaviors. And some of the overarching messages are like, it's okay. That's you. You do you. Whatever you're doing is cool. It's okay. And you should love yourself absolutely no matter what. So it's not a challenge to you necessarily, but I wonder how you deal with that, because you do preach self-love and you do teach self-love, but almost like earned self-love, like you've earned that and you've achieved that, and please correct me if I'm misrepresenting your position. But I guess my question would be, what do you make of those ads and that media and those magazines that are like, hey, whatever you bring to the table as is, you're good to go. Love yourself anyway. And if you do kind of encounter that, how do you deal with that? Do you shift mindset? Do you kind of go along with that self-love, or how do you deal with that issue with yourself or your clients?
It is. It's an interesting subject right now. And I always come back to the pendulum, right? So absolutely, it can swing really far one way to self-love, no matter what you're doing, even if you're damaging your body or damaging your mindset, whatever it is. And then the other way as well too, where you're just, you are not friends with you, you are hating on you. So we always want to come into that middle part of the pendulum, right? So it's really easy to really jump wrong. Anytime you start one thing new, right, and you're really excited about it, it's all you talk about, and it consumes you. It's who you are. It's your full identity in that time. So jumping onto the self-love, self-acceptance, looking into the root. I'm very much from a holistic background. So what is the root of that? When you choose to have that destructive behavior, but you're still loving yourself through it, is that truly self-love? Now, it's working to become the person that supports you, right? So going back to the affirmations from earlier, kind of come full circle on this. With the affirmations, I am disciplined. Well, if you're someone who's not disciplined, you're not bullshitting your brain, right? You're like, no, I'm not disciplined. I'm not at all. I'm trying to be. So changing that wording to I'm working to becoming someone who is disciplined, right? You're still doing the affirmation, but you're in line. You're being reasonable with who you are as a human being today, right? And then coming to as well with the, when you are, it's a good way to word this. What is the root of why you're doing that action? Are you drinking excessively because you love yourself or because you're numbing yourself? Are you eating foods that are not fueling your long-term health and not nutrient dense because you love yourself, or because you've never learned otherwise of what it feels like to fully nourish your body, right? It is so easy to swing really far one way or the anything. And one of my words for this year is nuance, right? It's not as simple as just love yourself, and whatever action you do it's the working through what parts of myself don't I love. Just because you have self-love doesn't mean you love every little bit about you. It's accepting that I have this part about me that I don't like. It's finding the root cause as to why you're doing that action. And then that comes into intentional living. The actions that you're taking every single day, what is your why behind them? And then when you come back to that base why of, I want to exercise because I want to feel energized. It's an intentional connection to the self-love.
I think that, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know we didn't talk about beforehand that coming up, but it just, that term self-love can be used and misused, and acceptance, radical acceptance. It's such a nice thing to say, like, well, you just accept people for whoever they are. Like, well, what if they're a murderer, right? What if they're an abuser? Like, do you accept that? Or is that something we need to look at, right? And I think you're on the right track there with that intentional living. Are you truly living intentionally? And if the answer is yes, like, no, I chose all this. This is all what I want. Then pushing to that deeper level of like, well, what does that satisfy? Why is that what you want? Where does that come from? Is that learned? And then to follow that up with that idea that you don't really know how good it could be because you've never lived in an intentional way and really thrived and felt super healthy. What's that phrase is like, feeling healthy, it tastes better than any ice cream or something like that. It's like one of those diet mantras, right?
Yeah. It'll never taste as good as skinny feels or whatever.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. But there's some truth to that, right? Because I think if you do get into a more optimal state of functioning emotionally, spiritually, physically, any of that, once you get a taste of that, you're sort of like, oh, this is what it means, You probably have this a little bit in Canada, but in New England right now, the sun's starting to come out and the days are getting a little longer, and we joke about seasonal affective depression or disorder, and it's like, ha, ha, ha. It's like a little running joke until the first sunny day, and you feel that lift, and you're like, oh, man.
You get your personality back.
Yeah, you get your personality back, and it's like, oh, it's not so funny. Right? It's not, it really is a big difference, right? And so if you could choose intentionally to live in that state or the hunkered down for the winter state, which one would you really choose if you had the choice? So...
Well, and I love even that you just put there, like the murderer, the abuser, that's an extreme example. But again, what's the root behind it? Why did that person become that way? Now, it doesn't make their action correct, but it stemmed from something. So even bringing it down to a much more micro level of a small habit that you're doing, you've learned how to do it that way for a reason. What's the why behind? Where did that come from?
Yeah, and it's constant swaps between what you really want versus what you want right now, right? Because if you showed a 10-year-old version of yourself, you today, just let you watch a video of you all day, would they love everything? Would they love how you're feeling, how you're looking, what you're doing, how you're living your life? I don't know that we grow up aspirationally and think, man, I really hope I get 4 hours of video games in every day, and I hope that I can just, be 50 pounds overweight, and I really hope I have an unsatisfying relationship. It'd be great if I was just dragging myself through a relationship. Like, so when did you give up on your best self? When did you give up on those dreams, And there's no judgment to any of that. Like, I play video games sometimes, and there's video game designers that go, look, I do it 12 hours a day. Great. Find your passion and go chase it. So I'm not after any specific behavior. I just think that we compromise and make deals with ourselves subconsciously over and over and over, and you end up in a place that you probably would have never chosen for yourself in the first place, and so kind of how did that happen? So when I want two questions. One is when should people think about working with a coach like you, right? Like, what are they noticing in their life? What experiences are they having? And that should encourage them or maybe prompt them to reach out to you or people like you. Like, what role does this wellness coach play, and when should people be thinking about utilizing your services?
Beautiful. Thank you for asking that, because coaching is a bit of a confusing thing if people have never done it before, right? So I say the number one prompt is, if you have repeatedly, so I would say 2 or 3 times, given something a genuine go to the best of your ability with the knowledge you currently have, and it's not sticking, you are not making progress, or it's really not feeling what you thought it was going to be like, right? So that could be for 2 reasons. One, you're not taking the actions that might be most effective just from lack of knowledge, not from a lack of effort, or 2, what you thought you wanted is not actually what you wanted. So you need to, take another step back and decide what you really want out of your life. So accountability is 95% more likely for you to achieve a goal. Whether you are accountable to a partner, to a friend, to a coach, to a personal trainer, it doesn't matter. That is where this long-term success lies, right? We are community creatures. We are meant to rely on one another. So if you're noticing that you're having that repetitive, unable to achieve the goals that you're working for, or even one step before that, you have no idea what your goal is. I know this was for me. I knew I wanted something more. I had no idea what more was. It turned out to be a coaching business for me. I knew I wanted a business. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, but literally outside of I want a business, I had no idea what I wanted. So that's when I started to work with a coach, because they ask you questions you wouldn't think to ask yourself. The point of a coach is not to give you answers. It's not to guide you. The point of a coach is to ask you questions to find the answers that are already inside you. Obviously, with therapy, that is past and present based more, whereas coaching is present and future based more. You don't go to a coach for traumas or anything like that. We are not trained in that. Some are, but most of us are not trained in that. It is goal setting, future pacing, creating a reality moving forward from here of what's going to build what feels really authentic to you. So it's that repetitive, I can't do this. Maybe it's time to ask for some help.
You could tell you're a business owner. You worked in your disclaimer there. Like, I am not a therapist. Do not.
No. Very much not.
Let's draw those lines. But no, I wonder, because it is an emerging field, right? So therapy has been around for a while, and now coaching is kind of this new thing. And, I think the internet has facilitated that. I know you've shared with a lot of where your clients are. These are people you could have never reached without the internet, without modern technology. And so it's a beautiful thing. But I get a sense that therapy and old school kind of like traditional clinical approaches would actually play very nice with coaching and vice versa, because like what you said, we're uncovering the past, dealing with that, resolving past traumas, getting prepped for action. And you guys are sort of the action experts. Okay, great. Now, day in, day out, what does that look like? Is that how you see that relationship developing? Do you think that would be symbiotic that way?
I can't say that enough. And that's coming from personal experience and working with my clients. Therapy and coaching meld beautifully, because what I've noticed is you start coaching and it surfaces all these things you didn't know you had. So then you go to your therapist and whoa, help me work through this. And then you come back and you're at your next level and you're able to accelerate your coaching by leaps and bounds because they've worked simultaneously. Or same with, it can be the reverse too. If you're working through with something and you think, there was the answer that I never knew I had inside me, if that's where that came from. Now I know how to take what I want to take action on, but I don't know how to take the action.
It's funny on the therapy side, just full disclosure, there are a list of interventions. There are things that we all know and train, but we're more insight-based. We're more awareness-based, right? And so the old joke about Freudian psychotherapy used to be that you would sit on the couch for 2 years and then you would decide it's your mother's fault. And then you would go, what do I do now? And your therapist wouldn't have any answers, right? Like their goal was to get to the root cause and develop the underlying, understanding and awareness. So there's a gap there. There really is. I mean, I know therapists to this day, I have done this in the past myself, where a client will ask, okay, so great, what do I do? And they Google it. And they go, seriously, like interventions for, right? We were talking with a psychologist recently, and he was talking about in his training, they said, well, just do a breathing exercise with him. And he went, great, which one? And I go, just pick one. And he was like, oh, you don't know. You're not doing it. It's such a great story, right? So I think that's great. I think that's because you can, what's more likely? Are you going to act your way into better thinking, or are you going to think your way into better acting? And the answer is probably both on some level, because like you said, as the actions change, new thinking has to evolve with it and new understanding as well. So for non-clients or folks who are just sort of like general advice, people out there, life is okay, but it's not what it could be. Do you have any kind of like common foundational beliefs or tips, things that people can kind of start now if they want to go in that direction of improvement? Like what are, your top 2 or 3 things? Maybe not giving out specific interventions. Maybe it's just mindset work or whatever, but just general improvement strategies that you like to employ that maybe people could utilize starting today.
100%. I'm all about micro actions. So starting today, the first thing, write your why down. And this isn't why I'm going to work with a coach or anything. This is why I'm choosing to build a life that feels better for me. So write a clear why and what it's going to feel like when you get there. Not what you think it's going to be, not the external.
Time to wake up, Michelle.
Yeah, it's telling me I've actually got a client here at 11:15, so it gets me to stop talking.
We'll cut you loose after this. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, sounds good. So, sorry, I'll jump back to that.
So your why. You need to find a why, and not only the why, but the feelings of the why.
Yeah, attach the emotion deeply to it. And then also, what's your next micro step? And I mean micro. So this kind of comes into the Atomic Habits. I don't know if you're familiar with that book by James Clear.
1% better. Yeah.
Exactly. So what does that mean? You're going to move your body in the morning, but you don't move at all in the morning. Normally get up, you're out the door 5 minutes later. Okay, beautiful. You know what your micro action step is? Lay out your yoga mat in the morning. That's it. Make the action so unbelievably easy that there's no possible way for you not to achieve it. And then a couple days later, sit down on the mat for 2 seconds. And then a couple of days later, get into a downward dog, whatever it is, right? Building these micro steps to start to build the habit of this is who I am. And I show up when I say I'm going to show up. So I'm going to do it in such a tangible way, right? And then also accountability. Tell somebody you're doing it and be like, buddy, please hold me accountable. Tell your best friend, tell your partner, tell your sister, I don't care. Tell someone and say, hey, can you help me out a little bit? Hold each other accountable. Even better if you get them involved in it. And accountability, find a why, make a micro action that's just impossible not to do.
Well, listen, I heard the alarm, so I know I could talk to you a lot longer. We're going to have you back on. We've talked about like subject matter panels and things like that, and I think you'd be a great contributor to that kind of stuff. So we would definitely love to have you back. And but for people who want to find you specifically, so these are micro actions. These are things everybody can do, but somebody's moved by this and says, hey, I want to work with Michelle. Like, how do they find you?
Totally, yeah. So I'd love to have you over on my Instagram community. It's just Stiles Coaching, Stiles. That's where I'm most active. And from there, I've got all the links to my website. I've got lots of freebies, micro actions to get your day going, how to hold yourself accountable if you don't have someone to hold you accountable right now. All of that on listed, lots of resources on there. And I'm always available by DMs. I'm available to have chats with people if they're unsure what they need. So that's the best way to reach me. And then we can go from there on more specific needs.
Sure. Individualized programs and all that good stuff. So yeah, Stiles Coaching and the DMs are open. So get on it. Here you go. So listen, I had a blast. I hope you had a good time. I hope we got out. Is there any final words of encouragement or, anything you'd like to say before we officially part ways here?
I just want to remind people that they can do the thing. They can have this life. It's right there. It's reachable. It takes some effort and you can do the thing. And I think that's just something that we forget to remind ourselves of often.
And it sounds like with your message, life can look good on the outside, but also feel just as good on the inside too. You can't have a congruent experience, which is really important for watering down that cognitive dissonance and feeling like you're living an authentic life. I mean, that's really, really important too. And so again, congrats on your progress, Michelle. Congrats on your coaching business. It's obviously going to go far. Thank you again for the time. Really appreciate you having you, and we'll do that again. And for everybody at home, we always like to talk about our sponsors. So Anew Behavioral Health. If you are looking at that coaching therapy integration, you're looking at getting that insight, looking at building that awareness so you can get into an action state. Anew Behavioral Health, ANEWBH.com. They do have psychiatrists, they do have psychologists, they do have therapists, case managers, nurses standing by willing to help you. And as an agency, we are very coaching friendly. So if you have a coach and want to add to that, or you want to use your therapy and use that as a launch into some direct coaching support, we'll find those resources for you as well. So again, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Ian, for being here to help us produce. I appreciate you guys listening. And until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Thanks. Hey guys, although Through Help and Back is an excellent podcast with a lot of great ideas, I do want to let you know that in no way is Through Help and Back expected to be perceived as or relied upon in any way as specific medical advice or mental health advice for you personally. The information provided through Help and Back on our website or our podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment that can be provided by your own providers. Do not use our content in lieu of professional advice given by qualified medical professionals, and do not disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking professional advice because of the information you have read on our website, heard on our podcast, or otherwise received from us. Although we love discussing issues related to healthcare, mental health, and addiction, we are not providing direct healthcare, mental health care, medical, or nutrition therapy services. We're not attempting to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure in any manner whatsoever any physical or psychological ailment, any mental or emotional issue, disease, or condition. We are not giving you specific medical, psychological, or religious advice whatsoever. Please take care of yourself and take care of others as you always seek the advice of your own medical providers and your own mental health providers regarding any questions or concerns you have about your specific health, or before implementing any recommendations or suggestions from us. These are ideas that have worked for other people. We think it's important to share them. We do not guarantee that they will work for you specifically. Do not stop taking any medications without speaking to your physician. nurse practitioner, physician assistant, mental health provider, or any other healthcare or medical professional. And if you have or suspect that you have a medical or mental health issue, contact your own healthcare provider promptly. Also, one last thing, if you know or suspect that you are currently experiencing a crisis, it is absolutely imperative that you seek the advice of your doctor or other emergency healthcare services prior to ever thinking about using our content. We love the conversations. We're glad you're stopping by. We hope you take a lot from the content. But again, for your specific individual medical situation, please always seek quality personal care from your own providers. Do not let this information or this advice stand on its own. Thanks so much for listening.